I thought I'd do a short, quick video for my American followers summarizing what's been happening today and all week in parts of England. If you've been on social media, you may have seen some pretty shocking footage of violent riots, mass arrests, arson attacks, looting, and then the counter response, such as so-called Muslim patrols, people armed with weapons, dressing in black, and shouting Allahu Akbar through the streets of various English towns. Um, so what happened is that on the 29th of July, there was a deadly mass stabbing in a town named Southport, which is nearby Liverpool, and it was a horrific attack on young children, particularly young girls. Three young girls were killed in the stabbing attack. There were about 10 other people who were injured, some of them very critically and seriously. And for about 48 hours, we didn't really know anything about the suspects. So there was a lot of misinformation, disinformation online. Um, the day after the mass stabbing attack in Southport, there was a vigil. And then after the vigil, um, people from that community and allegedly others who had traveled in amassed outside a local mosque in Southport and began throwing projectiles at it. Police responded, and then a full-on riot broke out. Police vehicle was set on fire, officers were injured, and a lot of violence happened. Um, the suspect is identified as a 17-year-old male who in a few days from now will turn 18, but his name was unsealed by the court. He comes from an African migrant family background. There's been no evidence to suggest at all that that his alleged mass killing had anything to do with radical Islam. But nevertheless, a lot of the resentment and anger that's being fueled. You can see it online in sentiments being expressed. It's grievances by from the white British working class resentment against mass migration, illegal migration, um, Islam, economic issues, and a whole number of grievances, and all of it is spilling out into these riots that are breaking out in primarily low income working class towns in the north of England, so quite far from London, hours and hours away. There on the 31st of July, there was a attempted protest outside Downing Street in London, which is the Prime Minister's residence, and that was immediately shut down by police. Some of the videos there, you see that police created a kettle and just mass arrested anyone there, including elderly people, older women, and some of the accusations from these right-wing rioters, if you will, or right-wing protesters, whatever you want to call them, is that there's two-tier policing in that leading up to the riots of this last week, there have been political violence and riots carried out by migrant communities in other towns, such as Hare Hills, which is by Leeds. There was unrest and attack outside of a police station in Rochdale, England, by Muslim protesters over alleged police brutality. And all that was met by what appears to be law enforcement sort of stepping back and giving people the space to express their resentments if they come from a particular community. And then so earlier on Saturday, all throughout Saturday, just through different towns um, across the north of England, but also in Bristol, which is in the southwest, there were these flash protests that were announced, calling for people to mobilize against um, illegal immigration, against Islam, to mourn the children that were killed. And then that spurred a counter reaction from left wing groups, Antifa, and also Muslim protesters. And scenes of violence broke out in many, many towns and cities like Hull, um, uh, and other towns in the north. So all of this is building up, I would argue, decades of issues between different communities in Portland, in different communities in England, not mixing well together, and the government um, ignoring some of those grievances and series of terrorist attacks, Islamic terrorist attacks over the years that have just built up a certain amount of anger, and it's built out in these really horrible, ugly scenes where you see rioters in the street attacking drivers, smashing up businesses, setting police cars on fire, accosting various people, and then assaulting them. And uh, we'll have to wait and see what happens next, obviously, but things are quite tense right now, because if it won't take much for things to potentially escalate a lot more. So there you go. A lot of information. I tried to summarize as quick as I could, and I can see now it's like a 6-minute video. Thanks for tuning in.